April, what are we, 2024, right? Someone's going to win a 2024 NBA championship ring, which has no bubble asterisk to it. It's just a standard ring for a standard NBA champion. And yeah, man, I guess we're middle of the first round right now. Some teams are about to go home. The sun is setting quickly for them, and some teams are still alive. I don't know which series you want to talk about first, Nick.
Well, first off, if you know anything about NBA basketball, you know that by the end of the playoffs, there's going to be an asterisk on the championship. That's just how we operate. We'll find a way to invalidate the champions. But yeah, look, first round flying by. I feel like I made this comment last week that there's not a lot of breathing in between it. And I actually still feel that way. If not for the Lakers winning today, they would already be, Denver would already be into the second round. So that's pretty quick for me, a week turnaround. But I've got ESPN open, and it's the best site that I've been able to find telling me the thing. So I'm going to read that in order. We'll start with Boston and Miami. Last week when we reacted, they had the Boston 3 barrage, and then Miami comes back, and then Boston comes back. Do you see this series going a little bit more back and forth, or do you think that Boston can wrap it up in 5 here?
You ask that's the toughest question you can open with here. Yeah, this round feels like you doubt on the Heat, and they just pinch a W somehow, and then you go, they have a fighter's chance, right? And then you just realize, you know what, the Celtics are the best team in the league right now this season. They've got the depth, they got the bench, they got the vets. They've been there so many times, or so close so many times already. And Miami's, their best players banged up, right? And they're just relying on players that are, sort of role players to him. So I don't know. I can't say I'm going to be putting money that Miami are going to get out of this first round. Yeah, as much as it's nice they got on the board.
Yeah, look, without Jimmy Butler, it becomes pretty hard to fathom them actually winning any more games. And they did need to shoot a franchise record on threes to pull that off. So it is kind of tricky to pick them in a sense.
Well, right? It's not tricky to pick you because you're frozen right now. What the hell is going on with your terrible internet in the country, Victoria?
So it's not terrible internet. I actually just think it's my browser. So I was trying to play that off, thinking I could eventually regain my tabs, but I actually can't.
F5 is that? I don't know. Is that what you need to do right now?
Is that going to do it? I don't think so.
I don't know. Is this a tech support?
It's actually just like the browser's crashed. I'm gonna close and reopen. Give me 2 seconds.
Right, I'll try and keep this seat warm by just doing nothing but looking pretty.
Having to play wheelchair rugby is the best bet that I ever lost. I'm Shay Graham, wheelchair rugby player. I loved everything about it, the team, the community. I was confident beforehand, but I'm so much more confident now.
Sí, ¿vos de qué parte sos?
Yo de aquí.
Ah, mira.
Tuve que partir de
Team foul.
First quarter and about a minute and a half in. Porter against Wiggins. Back to Gordon. Just 5 on the clock. Top of the key.
A solid defender, Thompson has a lot of experience guarding the league's top perimeter players.
Wiggins passes to Kuminga, and he banks in the layup.
Just taking it right to the rim, and no one was there to greet him.
Easy possessions like that literally are just a gift. You just dream of them. He'll gladly take those.
Now here's Murray. Shoots over Curry. Curry with the block.
Making his presence felt on defense. Curry with the rejection.
And Thompson gets it to go.
Just a textbook lead pass right there, putting it right where it needed to be.
They're searching for a way to score.
Yeah, buckets have been very tough to come by.
Outside Murray. Pass to Gordon. Shoots over Kuminga.
There we go.
Are we actually back now?
Theoretically, yeah. Did you have an issue too, or is it just me?
No, I just got bored of looking pretty, so I was able to even stream everyone a YouTube ad or two, and yeah, it was perfect. This is wonderful news. You should go your al natural background with your pretty white walls now, man. Can't be too bad.
I just don't want people knowing how I live, which is no decor and no furniture. Are we still live? Are we still going?
I think we're moving now, so we're both saying that the Heat have no chance. Bye to the Miami Heat. We don't care about you. It's
4-1, 4-2 if we're being interesting, but that says more about what the Celtics can do than anything else. New York versus Philly. Philly got on the board with a 50 bomb from Joel Embiid, who legitimately is picking up a new diagnosis per day. Now has Bell's palsy.
Yeah.
I said the other week that this man's going to retire soon, and that's aging like fine wine. Not that I'm relishing in that. It's unfortunate that this guy's just going through the wars. He really is. And New York is hanging around here. The only concern you'd have here for New York is Jalen Brunson hasn't played well. Really, that's what it's boiling down to. And obviously, the Knicks are going to need to contain Joel Embiid a little bit more than they did in the previous game. And I don't think anyone has the personnel to do that when Joel Embiid's healthy. And does this series still just hinge on that? If Joel Embiid is able to be healthy, they could probably win it. And if Joel Embiid can't maintain that level of health or execution, then the Knicks will be perfectly fine. Is that a shared sentiment?
Look, I think you're sort of, halfway there. It is this whoever was going to face the Sixers and Embiid now returning to the lineup. This was a not ideal first round matchup. Yeah, the Sixers should have probably been a top 4 team and home court advantage for the playoffs here versus being the underdog in this sort of sense. Look, I think I'm curious your take a little bit here though. Like, Embiid is literally guaranteed they're going to win this series. And when I read that, and that was obviously before he dropped 50 and they won Game 3. And when I read that, I was like, surely this is a foolish statement. Like, I don't know. Does this sort of, statement out there into the press, into the media, to the whole world, and sort of empower your team, or does it actually give you even more expectations to get this job done, which is already an uphill battle because the fact you're down, 2-0. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not personally a big fan of that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, what else? I think we've talked about this in the past. What else is he supposed to say?
Well, a lot of teams are in that situation. You talk about just getting better that next game or making some adjustments. Not such a bold prediction that you're going to actually win this series. Like, don't get me wrong. If they win this series, then it all goes well, right? Maybe that's similar to what we do sometimes. We talk about things and then it doesn't go our way and then we forget about it quickly, right? But then, hey, if it goes our way, we can all talk about it for as much as we like because we called it first. Is that what it is here? I don't know. Maybe that's what Joel Embiid is just trying to achieve here.
Well, there's definitely like manifesting destiny. There's visualization. That's really important in sports. And he's confident. And we'd rather him be confident than being like, it's going to be a hard series. And if we win it and creating excuses, he's not going to leave this series with an excuse, right? And obviously there's an interesting narrative with him because he's never actually went out of the second round. He always is injured in the playoffs. And it does feel like what he's currently doing to himself, playing through this knee injury, playing through the Bell's palsy diagnosis, and whatever else is going to come along his way. He almost wants to shed that narrative, and he's going to push himself through whatever he's got, which hopefully doesn't end up being ironic in a sense, right, where he actually hurts himself further. So
I guess at the end of the day, do we think the Sixers can actually win this? Can Joel Embiid's prophecy come true? Because obviously I picked the Knicks, so I'm going to continue to ride the Knicks. I'm going to say no, yeah. But are they going to grab Game 4? Is this such a critical game? And if they tie this up, does this mean the Sixers can cause an upset here?
Well, when you tie it up, you turn it into a 3-game series, right? And you really want to put teams away. So, we saw it with the Lakers today not being put away. And you can then get delusional and say, well, what if, right? Because that is what happens, right? The second that one team wins, well, they've demonstrated the ability to win. Can they do it again, right? And so, yes, Philly won their first game. Can they do it again? Well, yeah, history would say that they can. They just did it. And that's kind of what can happen, and the momentum can build. And New York, at this point, doesn't have Jalen Brunson going off. Obviously, had a really good game 3. I think he had 39 or 40 points. But, if he doesn't go off and Joel Embiid goes off, we can see how that game plays out. And it's a Philly home game, so it'll be interesting. But a series that is, in my opinion, a little bit more interesting, especially with the last game, Indy versus Milwaukee. Indy taking the 2-1 lead off the Tyrese Halliburton game winner. Good Tyrese game, finally overdue, which was nice. Chris Middleton, probably the biggest surprise out of all of that, having like 42 points. But Dame time, maybe my clock's busted. I don't know what to tell you, but he had a really good game 1, and then he hasn't done much else since. And he went down today with some injury for a period of time, and maybe he's okay, maybe he's not. But maybe my prediction was wrong. Maybe Indy is poised to just. Siakam's been a lot better than I expected, and Tyrese has probably got him to leverage his bad play right now. Tyrese on his own would have been a problem, but he's got Siakam there playing really, really well. And so Tyrese can afford to have a bad game and then finally get his rhythm and actually have a good one. And I could see them easily taking the series at this current pace. It's not looking good for the Bucks.
The Bucks are banged up. Yeah. And that's often the beginning of the nails in the coffin at this point of the season. Is that not the case? Yeah, it's like the Heat, yeah. Another story probably if Jimmy Butler was healthy. Be another story if Giannis was healthy. Be another story if Dame was healthy. Yeah, clearly now he's not healthy. Some Achilles issue, I think, which is, fairly severe, especially for someone that's a little bit older as well, in a sense. And he's already sort of lost a step or two since he left Portland. And yeah, it's just not shaking up great for the Bucks and Doc Rivers, right? That was the whole situation I was talking about right at the start here. And I don't know. I feel like the fact if they lose this first round, yeah, in fact, if they don't get to the conference finals minimum, the whole shake-up here was probably not necessary from a coaching perspective. Yeah, we touched upon it earlier, but it feels just not justified. Not justified. Yeah, but
it's going to be a hard look because they've shifted so much. No, so not just acquiring Dame, but losing Grayson Allen, losing Drew Holiday, losing Bud. It's all of it that they've locked themselves into things. But they also gave Giannis the extension, and they've also got Dame on the books now. And Chris is older and hasn't played very well. And there's a lot of things that I don't envy about the Bucks situation. I think a lot of teams, especially with this new CBA, and I'll touch on this when we get to Phoenix, but I actually think some teams are now cemented into a status that they probably didn't want to be. I think the days of being able to pivot into contender or out of contender easily has kind of gone the wayside because they're not going to be able to sign any free agents of substance because of the way that the cap works. So they are stuck with this core, and this core isn't going to get it going. A little bit of continuity with everyone would help, yes, but the Bucks also demonstrated a lack of patience because they had a really good record and they were getting somewhere. It's almost like they wanted to skip the teething process of a new coach and a new star player because they got 43 games in with a record of 30-13, and they're like, "Nah, we reckon we can do better," and that's backfired on them royally. And statistically speaking, a new coach or a new star player never translates to a championship immediately. They actually just needed to hold the course. They needed to roll the dice, see if they could get it working, which they could have. We don't know how the season plays out in the alternative there. And instead, they've almost reset themselves, and they're going to need another year of the continuing lineup to be able to see if anything can work.
I think as we've gotten older now, we've watched a lot of sports in our life. I think something that really is becoming more and more obvious to me, at least, is how fickle these championship windows are. Yeah, it does. It almost feels like it wasn't that long ago they won the championship. Yeah, it's a similar situation to it wasn't that long ago that you guys were in the finals. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that the Celtics were in the finals and so on and so forth. Okay, all these little things, and then you sort of get there or very close to the top, and you go, oh well, we're just there. We'll get there next year, or we'll do it again, and then it doesn't eventuate for one thing or another.
Mm.
One player goes down with an injury. Front office decides to make a change. One free agent decides he wants a bit more money and goes somewhere else. It's a really sort of fickle sort of industry and landscape there. And I think here's a thought. If you wind this all back, let's say they do lose this first round, which is not over yet, yeah, but they probably do need to grab game four, right? They probably need to tie it up here, yeah. But if they do lose this first round, or ultimately, no one's really backing them to go all the way this year. Would it have been too far-fetched to maybe have kept, say, Coach Bud, and perhaps looked at some more tweaks around the fringes versus, like you mentioned, all these crazy wholesale changes that they did to this roster. Um, and ultimately it hasn't paid any greater dividends to this point, and it's highly unlikely that's going to be the case.
Well, it almost seems like probably the elephant in the room now is that if you flame out in this series as well, you've had 2 first-round exits, and we can probably overcomplicate this, but then simplify it by saying Giannis wasn't healthy in either of those 2 series. And that's really what hurt them the most. And we've talked about this. If Jokic was injured, did Denver have 2 first-round exits? Probably, right? That's the nature of it when you lose your best player. And maybe they've tried to do too much, right? Picking up Dame in my head made sense because then you can buffer this and you can let Giannis rest, but it's not working. So, they put a lot of eggs in that basket and it hasn't come to fruition. So good time for the Pacers to get matched up with them. As a 3-6 matchup, it's not always easy to have the advantage, but they're looking poised to take it. So now we go to the 4-5 matchup, which is Orlando and Cleveland. And surely a smirk's got to come across your face here because your Orlando Magic have tied it up with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I'm going to pull this up. This is going to be the thing that I focus on. The Magic have scored 83, 86, 121, and 112.
Yep.
Okay? 2 losses, 2 wins. They have held the Cleveland Cavaliers to 97, 96, 83, and 89.
Mm-mm.
So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me that the Magic defense is actually pretty solid. It's pretty consistent. They're keeping you to below 100. And what does it tell me about the offense? It's a little up and down, which we would expect for a young team. And we're seeing that with the random people stepping up and the random shooting performances that we're getting out of people. But I know that Magic are going to have to win a game on the road, and that may be the deciding factor for this series, because if Magic can't win a game on the road, then we probably go to a game 7, but they lose inevitably. But if they're able to take game 5, I think they've got this in 6, as I predicted. Cleveland should be winning. And we said this last season as well. And this is probably the frustrating thing with Cleveland. Why hasn't Cleveland done more than this? To only win 1 game against New York last season and potentially only 2 games against this Magic squad. This is why it's not working in Cleveland, because they actually should be beating this team quite easily. That they're poised to beat them. And yet the Magic are hanging around. So what are your thoughts on the series?
I feel like this current situation has all these rhetorical questions, like, for example, was Rudy Gobert better than Donovan Mitchell in Utah? And maybe is Donovan Mitchell getting traded this offseason because the Cavs do not really look like they're a top tier team? Yeah, the fact that this series is now tied 2-2 has not really empowered anyone to feel that the Cavs are going to be able to go all the way this year at all. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'm going to stay consistent here. I think we're going to lose the next 2 games. but if we win, I'm happy with that. But look, I think the Cavs will make some adjustments. You're right, we do have to win a game on the road. So ultimately, if the Cavs can, take care of home court in Game 5, we're going to have to win a pivotal Game 6 there. And look, we've hung our hat on defense all season. That's a good starting point. Don't get me wrong. Maybe the future is a little bit brighter for us right now than it's ever been, yeah, until that payday that we talk about, right? That's around the corner for some of our key players. But hey, look, let's cross that bridge then. Look, I'm hoping we win a couple more games. Yeah, maybe we can squeak in this second round. Yeah, but I'm not celebrating yet. All right, it's nice that at least we got a couple of W's so far.
All right. Well, we'll go on to the 1-8 matchup in the West, which is OKC against New Orleans. I think I had predicted that OKC would get this in like 4-1 or 4-2 just with the youth. But they've been phenomenal. So after that exciting game one where they just squeaked it out, they've really not looked back, beating the Pelicans by 20 or 30 respectively. No Zion really hurts New Orleans. Brandon Ingram, weirdly passive. CJ McCollum, clearly not built to do this against a really talented team. SGA looks phenomenal. Chet's playing fantastic. I think that they'll take care of the series in the next game or two, if we're going to give a little bit of credit to a fighting team down 3-0. But the thing that probably I focus on the most, they really are relying on Chet Holmgren to hold down the paint, aren't they? Like, if he goes, then they've got nothing. And when you think about who they're matching up next, they go against probably Dallas, assuming that series plays out the way that I predicted. I reckon they can skate through that one as well, because the need for a big is a little bit lower. But when they go up against either Minnesota or Denver, surely that's when they get exposed here. Surely the dream can't continue, because that interior presence is what's holding them back. And they don't really have an answer for when they play a good big. But they're going to have to play a good big. They're not going to avoid a good big at some point.
Yeah, look, maybe the first thing with this current series here, at the end of the day, we got to remember this is first versus eighth. Yeah, after 82 game season here, there's probably a reason why the Pelicans did slide all the way to eighth and scraped in through the play-in, and I think that's sort of been exposed here. We can't really say the Pelicans lost the MVP for whatever 30, 40 games in that sort of sense, and that's why they fell all the way down there. They were literally healthy the whole season until now, where Zion's now out, that they only scraped into the 8th seed, I think, into the playoffs here. So, like you said, I think OKC get this job done here. I would say play in 4 right now. I think Pelicans are happy to go on holidays. I don't see they think that they really have I don't know, maybe they need some affirmative statement out there like, oh, we're going to get the job done here, or something. I don't know, yeah, come back from 4-3, but I guess no one's probably going to be betting that that's going to happen here. But with the Chet Holmgren situation, maybe we're underestimating the fact that as long as you're tall, and as long as you're in the right spot on defense, that is that you're fundamentally sound, you're still going to be able to apply enough pressure to, compete against opposing centers. And I guess it would be a real intriguing matchup if, let's say, OKC did get all the way through to a conference final and they potentially face, say, the Nuggets, and Chet goes up against Jokic, and how that plays out. And I don't think Chet's supposed to neutralize Jokic, yeah? But he needs to just compete. Yeah, that's the catch, right? He needs to just be able to compete. And maybe it's not that far-fetched to suggest that he is able to do so. I don't know, but, that could be around the corner, perhaps.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Denver and Los Angeles series and you talk about coming back from 3-0, is this the Kings' chance to do something no one's ever done before? Are the Lakers going to go 4-0 from this point onwards? No, they're not. But that's what everyone is going to make you believe over the next 20 to 48 hours. The Lakers finally did it. They won their 2024 title, which was beating Denver, because that was the thing that was the tagline. How long is that streak going to go for? LeBron had a really good game. They beat them by 11. The part of me, because of how good Denver is, I really just chalk this up to like Denver just took their foot off the gas, or they had a lapse, or they just had a bad day. Like, they're that good that this is their bad day, losing by 11 when they're up 3-0, and they'll finish this in the next game anyway. Are you going to jump on the LeBron's going to come back from 3-0 train, or is Denver's fine?
Well, now they go back to Denver, correct? And,
yeah.
Yeah, look, I think, again, I talked about plus minus last week, I think. And LeBron, as much as he's making headlines that he did lead the team, I think, in scoring in this win. I think he scored 30, I think, in this win in Game 4. He was only +1 in the box score. Yeah, which is still a positive, don't get me wrong. But I think, again, it's interesting how maybe the media chooses what headlines to write and the narrative to take in different directions, right? I think AD had 25 points, 23 rebounds. That's probably fairly important too. can AD continue to dominate in a 2020 fashion, against, you know, Jokic and the Nuggets? Probably a big question. And maybe the bigger one here, which has been part of the narrative when they lose, right? And then it's all about LeBron when they win, is that, D'Angelo Russell showed up in game four. Yeah, he actually had a game as you would expect him to score, play. Like I think he scored 21 and contributed, yeah, versus that. So 0 from 7, I think, stinker that he had in game three. And, these things all matter, right? These things all matter. So yes, LeBron scoring 30, great. Great he had another, good game and they got a W here. Yeah, look, I don't know. I don't think I'm not definitely betting that they're going to win on the road here. Game 5, Nuggets are, they won that extra couple days rest, I think. Let's get the job done.
Well, we move on to the 3 and 6 in the West, which is Minnesota and Phoenix. And I guess I'll preface this with any good fan has to believe in their team, and so I will have to plant my flag now.
Clearly, I do not believe in my team at all. All right,
that's fine. That's fine. That's why I'm a better team supporter than you are. Suns in 7 now. That's just the default because for some reason they fell down 3-0. The Suns can't seem to score against this team. They can't stop them. Ant's having a breakout Michael Jordan-esque sort of moment. Rudy Gobert and Cat look like they're just clicking on all cylinders. KJ McDaniels, who was one of the only players not traded for Rudy Gobert, looking like that was the reason why they didn't trade him. Minnesota look really, really strong. Minnesota are definitely going to finish off this series unless everyone hurts their Achilles in the next game and Phoenix Bradbury's their way to a 7 win, which you just never know until you know. So I'll hold out hope until tomorrow morning when we're officially killed. Yeah, look, this is probably what we've been worried about with Phoenix. It's just ISO ball. It just doesn't work. It actually doesn't work. And the Brad Beal trade, when you look in hindsight, if they had kept Chris Paul and kept Ayton, are they in this same position? Well, Chris Paul and Ayton didn't have great years respectively, but obviously things are different when they're on a different team. Or can they have found another asset, right? Could the Drew Holiday asset ended up in Phoenix, so to speak? Or, it's the James Harden asset. Like the hypotheticals are what we have to rely on here in Phoenix. And it even gets worse than this because this team is the salary cap pusher. We can't sign anyone. We just signed Grayson Allen, and now he can't play in the playoffs. So that was a great move. And we have no draft picks. So I'm going to be really curious what happens in Phoenix. I really enjoyed 2021 when we made the finals and we're up 2-0. And I think that I'm going to probably turn 40 or 50 before that happens again. I think like the Magic making the playoffs every 16 years off a first round pick, I think that's going to happen to me every 28. So I got a little while to go now. It's a little down here. I'm a little under the weather. I think this is actually why. I figured it out. It's got nothing else to do anything else. I don't know if you need to speak on this series because I think it's pretty obvious they're down 3-0 and they've got no bloody chance. But tell me what you need to say. Don't take too long. We've got another series to talk about.
No. I got a fair few things to say about the series actually. But let me make a little observation firstly. When KD and the Suns get eliminated in the series and LeBron's Lakers get eliminated by the Nuggets, would this be the completion of the changing of the guards? Yeah, that the fact that LeBron, KD, Steph Curry are no longer competing in the second round of the playoffs. Yeah, just the second round of the playoffs. And we're now looking at that next generation of talent. I think that's something that, it needs to be, we had a good era there. It was a good era where, LeBron, whatever, GOAT or not GOAT or longevity GOAT, yeah, he's played lots of games, scored lots of points, good on him, okay. But Steph Curry will probably greatest shooter of all time, yeah, absolutely. But that's no longer the top of the tier here in the NBA. I think it's there's another set of players that are coming through that next gen now, and I think they're here now. And I think like KD, I don't know. I don't know about you, man. Did you suddenly become a KD fan when he became a Sun? Or were you already sort of like a KD fan before he was a Sun? I don't know, but his career in many aspects has, we probably, at some point need to talk more about KD because his career has so many asterisks including the fact that is he truly a winner? Yeah, and that's probably been a big knock since he left Golden State. And he went and joined the 73-9 Warriors. Yeah, and yeah, sure, he won 2 rings there. But it's like he just hasn't been able to, as much as he scores 30 points a game, being able to translate into W's. Is he, besides, if Carmelo had just joined a championship team, won a couple of rings, it's, that's a similar narrative, really. But, Carmelo never got his rings, but KD got his rings, and at least has avoided that conversation that he's got no rings. Man, I don't know. I think that's an aspect here that, the KD legacy, in the next few years, really, I don't think he's going to be going as long as LeBron has been going. I don't know, but probably needs to be touched upon.
He's almost a victim of the player empowerment era because he's chosen almost like in terms of defining him as an all-time great or a legacy sort of player, he's picked the wrong move every time. So even though he won a championship in Golden State, it was never going to be recognized because it was a dynasty already in motion. And then he goes to Brooklyn, which was the wrong call because he actually should have went to New York in hindsight. But, he went to Brooklyn and then Kyrie never panned out. And then he comes to Phoenix and you would figure, oh, well, that's also a good move. And then it doesn't pan out. He's always put himself in the wrong situation. And it's not always by his fault. He teamed up with Kyrie and Kyrie does the COVID vaccine thing and then has injuries and that kind of stuff. So that's not good. He goes to Phoenix and maybe he's put his eggs in the wrong basket and Devin Booker's not the person that he thought that he could be or is. But also every team he goes to blows it up. So he goes to Brooklyn and that young core of D'Angelo and Jared Allen and that really feisty team, they all disappeared so that James Harden could come in there and it didn't work. And then he goes to Phoenix and they had an established squad that just went to the finals, then had an embarrassing loss, now picked up KD. What are they going to do? But they blew up Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and then Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton leave. Like, that's the hardest part with KD is that he's very talented individually and his teams are always in some form of conversation, but they lose that continuity. They lose what they were doing. And you look at how Steph's career panned out. That's because they built around Steph. There was a system, a coach that had a system for a player and players that complemented that system. KD never got that because he never developed any continuity with people, right? And LeBron faced that as well. Like LeBron's career will be really interesting because LeBron had heaps of success jumping from team to team to team. But imagine the level of success he could have had if he just stayed put and someone legitimately could build around him, right?
Miami, stayed in Miami, maybe. I don't know.
Well, you look at how Miami's bounced back. Cleveland struggled to bounce back when he left both times. Really, like Miami has been to the finals 2 times since LeBron left. And Cleveland hasn't left the second round.
It's definitely, I think, a conversation to be had down the track when these players' careers are sort of, they're going to hang up their shoes and where it all shakes out.
The offseason. That's the offseason.
But there's actually another narrative here that I wanted to raise with you, and it's got to do with your main man, Devin Booker, right? And I don't want to be negative about him. Yeah, I want to start with that. Yeah, I'm not trying to be negative about Devin Booker here, okay? Obviously, I bagged him a little bit, and, maybe rightly so. He has not really lived up to the next Kobe tag, clearly, since he was given that, I don't know, 5 years ago now, give or take. But what do you think if I made this suggestion that the Phoenix Suns actually have suppressed Devin Booker's rise to be perhaps a superstar like Kobe Bryant? And let me explain a little bit more, okay? I guess when you guys made that finals, which is a little bit of a surprise, yeah, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule to a certain extent, yeah, he was the catalyst to it. Yeah, he was the best player on this team, and you guys had Chris Paul as a vet, give him guidance, steady point guard on the team, a young center that was able to sort of do his job inside, whether he's as reliable as you hoped he was or not, another story. Up and coming sort of defensive second option like Mikal Bridges, and then you had all these little young options like Cam Johnson, you had Cam Payne there, and you had a good feel there, and Booker was front and center of that whole build. But since then, have you guys not, if you look at this in a different perspective perhaps gone to him in an indirect way and said, "You're not good enough to lead this franchise"? Yeah, we've had to make all these moves. We're not willing to stick with it. We need to bring in a Hall of Famer. We need to bring in another All-Star. We need to do all these things. And when you bring in all these things, you take away touches from him. Yeah, you take away, the spotlight from him to a certain extent, which, we always look at that. Well, that's a good thing, right? I'm getting more superstars and so on and so forth. But is that like a lack of a lack of confidence in who he was when he was the best player in the team, clearly at that point when you made the finals?
I don't know if he would have been the best player. I feel like when you looked at raw scoring, yes, but when you look at impact on the team and the game, I think Chris Paul just has to take the credit. I think even though Chris Paul didn't score as much, I just think the way he controlled games, the way he orchestrated the team, that's what made them successful. They had a really disappointing flame out against Dallas. They had the best regular season and then they flamed out against that. And they kind of cheated the process, right? I think if you're going to get punched in the mouth during the playoffs and you get embarrassed like that, you need to come back and you need to prove something. And instead of doing it the right way, as in cut your teeth, we all use it as motivation, we get better, they just got someone else in that was better. But they traded out Mikal Bridges. I actually think when you do your deep dive on Phoenix in 5 years' time, because I don't think it's going to look good for Phoenix in 5 years' time, it started with losing Mikal Bridges. You had a really good player there. You had a really good player who played their role perfectly. And you had Cam Johnson, who, well, we've clearly needed three-point shooting all season, and that would have been a nice thing. We already had it. We had the pieces that we needed, right? And Chris Paul was getting older. I thought we got rid of Chris Paul because of DeAndre Ayton, right? I thought that there was a recognition that they picked DeAndre Ayton's side and they were going to, appease Chris Paul, etc. I think the way that they messed up Booker, is that they tried to cheat it. They tried to cheat the timeline. Booker is young and he needs to grow with young players. You look at what's happening in Boston with Jason Tatum. He has grown alongside Jaylen Brown. So he's had a running mate at the same age for a while. You look at what's happening in Orlando. Well, Paolo and Franz are around the same age. Like, you need young players to grow together and have some ups and downs together. And so Booker was getting that. And now we've blown it up. He's the only one left from that finals team. The only one left. And you've got all these mercenaries in there and different levels of experience, and you're trying to get them to work. And it's just been apparent since the get-go that it hasn't. And every time we've talked about the Suns, Booker, KD, and Durant can all go off for 30. Well, they almost did today. And it didn't really matter because they still fell by like 15, 16 points. So it doesn't look good. We're back to mediocrity, just like the post-Steve Nash days. Like, I hope our listeners enjoy me talking about the hot second-round European pick that we made that is going to have to crack our rotation because we can't afford to put anyone else on the court. And maybe Booker gets traded because let's just blow it up. Maybe Beal gets traded. It's dark days here. Can we move on to the other series?
Is Booker going to ask out?
I think he would.
I think he will. Do you think he's that sort of player that would go, I want out of here? I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I think KD would be like, man, you just got to leave. You just go join Denver.
It'll be Nets 2.0, basically, right? It'll be the three dominoes that just fall. Now you're gone, and now they're just the Nets all over again, and that's where they send all their players, right? I don't know, man. I feel like you guys are. Look, I guess like you said,
I think the window shifted, and it's okay to admit it, and it's best that I admit it now. I remember when we had that delusional Wizards fan say that they're going to be better than they were. It's all about acceptance. And I accept the fact that the window is closed for Phoenix now indefinitely, and we need to do something different, but it's not a short-term fix. Let's go to Dallas and Clippers before I end the podcast early. Kawhi's back, and they've lost both games since Kawhi came back. I don't think there's a reason to correlate that. Kawhi's not 100%. Mavericks are the better team. They have the more talented duo, I guess, at this point. And the fact that we're talking about Russell Westbrook this much is problematic, right, for the Clippers, because that is not the player that you expected. Paul George and James Harden are there, and they're doing their same shit that they always do, right? They're having a good game. They're not having a good game. They're having a good game. They're not having a good game. I think Mavericks are going to win the next one. They might lose game 5 at Clippers. They might win it, but they should get this in 6 quite easily. I think Dallas is going to cruise.
Look, I talked about Mavs not closing out series. The fact that they won game 2 and 3, and therefore now grab the lead, it sort of puts them in that perfect position that, let's say the Clippers grab game 4, Mavs grab game 5 and game 7, and they still take it all the way to the wire. I think there's still a little bit of fight left in the Clippers. I don't think they're ready to throw it in yet. PG had a woeful game 3, I guess, to his standards. And Westbrook, got tossed as well. I think it was 0 from 7, had 1 point or something like that. So, even if they took steps towards their averages, okay, I think that these games will become closer, and yeah, look, I'm still counting on this one going down the wire, but, they do have the best player on the floor there, in Luka, and that often is what all you need in these sort of games, I think. So, yeah, look, it'll be interesting how it shakes out, but, the Clippers are going to keep fighting. I think they've got vets that have something to prove, and they know that they don't have that many chances left.
We also haven't had the token Kawhi game where he single-handedly beats a team, so maybe that's overdue. But I also feel like when you talked about the changing of the guard, it was like if the Clippers fall, that's another one, right? Because Kawhi Leonard is probably the only one of substance that's really done anything in the playoffs. But James Harden's always loitered, and Westbrook's always loitered, and Paul George is always loitered, and it is a change of the guard because then you'll have the faces of SGA and Luka and Jokic and Edwards leading it, really. And the only person really skating by is Kyrie. But Kyrie's also playing the role that he probably succeeds in, and it's second. He's probably the best second fiddle that we've had in the league, right? And as long as he actually commits to that role, he does fantastic at it.
So what's our next series? I think we got the.
Are you wanting to make predictions or
No? Is that all 4 series? I actually
that was
lost track.
all?
I totally
Yeah, no,
lost track.
we talked about everybody. We spent a little while on Phoenix. My mood's definitely different post that conversation. But yeah, like the playoffs, the next time that we meet and do this again, we're going to probably have some second round matchups, either beginning or established. It doesn't feel as spicy as I was expecting. It feels like the West was less competitive than I was predicting. When we looked at the regular season and how close it got, I actually thought most of these series would have went at least 5 and 6, but we're currently looking at 2 sweeps and a gentleman's sweep. And depending on how Clippers Mavs go, it's surprising that the East is more competitive because I actually thought that the West was going to be more competitive, but that's just my own expectations.
Maybe the last thing I want to raise here is I was thinking about this a few days ago with the Knicks. Obviously, I backed the Knicks here, sort of a bold pick perhaps to a certain extent that they're clearly not a favorite at this point to win the championship. I'm saying they're going to go all the way and get themselves a title here. But how is it? What Brunson is doing right now? Yeah, to me reminds me a little bit of what Allen Iverson did. 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now, and how he sort of just wills his team to get those W's. And it's still early days, and I think maybe there's an element here that it's not necessarily how much he scores, but it's how he plays. Yeah, and I think it's equally important to suggest that the Knicks here are a team that have the pieces all around them in the spots that you need them to be. And if they click on any given day, right, and that's a big if, don't get me wrong, that Brunson has that sort of personality, and no one would have picked this, right? No one would have picked this, that Brunson has that personality to be able to just will them into W's every single game. And I think I sent you a message a couple of weeks ago, or screenshot, something like, obviously when I made this pick, and I said, did the Mavs trade the wrong guard? And that's why a no-brainer, right? 100 out of 100 people would say, no way, you keep Luka. Yeah, you keep Luka, you trade Brunson, you do that 100 times, in 100 goes, yeah? But surely there's a 1 in 100 that says, well, what if you traded Luka and kept Brunson and put the right pieces like the Knicks are doing here? Could you go to the promised land, which is that ring, riding that? And I think we're seeing that right now, and I guess we'll have an answer in a few weeks' time, right? Whether yes or no, potentially. But who ultimately may fall shorter, whether it's the Mavs or the Knicks. I think I'm really intrigued with that. I guess in part that's what I illustrated, 2 weeks ago or so.
Well, what would be more interesting, really, is them meeting in the finals for this ultimate what-if scenario, right? That would be the peak. That would be the peak. That would be the peak one, I think. Because no other team has traded with the opposite conference and positioned themselves to meet in the finals, right? Like those are the 2 most legitimate teams that can meet. I'm trying to do it in my head, but I don't think anyone's done a trade. Dame coming from Portland doesn't work. Harden going from, where did he flame out of last time? Philly to Clippers. Philly and Clippers could have happened, but yeah, it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, and I guess we'll be back again in a week or so time, and I guess we'll be talking about round 2, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. And good news for you, we don't have to talk about Suns anymore. Hey.
It's easy to accept that we're not going to win it this year, and it's good to know.